So let's go back to our examples in the Excel file, and let's go to Friends. So in Friends, I've prepared what looks sort of like a regular frequency table so far. It has frequency here, but here I have min of bin, my minimum value of the bin, and my maximum value of the bin. So for instance, if I want my bin to go from 0 to 100, then I would put in frequency all the people who are in between 0 to 100, right? But in order to establish the bin size that you want, one thing that's helpful to know in advance is what's the minimum value in your data set, and what's the maximum value in your data set. So here I'm going to be using Excel functions to help me do that. So the Excel function is pretty easy to remember because it's just min in order to find the minimum value. So I put in min and I put in my parenthesis, and I'm going to my data, and I'm going to my friends variable. See, we have people who have like thousands of friends, 700 friends. All right, and then I'm going to close my parenthesis there. Now, here, this is just saying, look at all of this data and find the minimum value. And it turns out that somebody in our data set has 0 friends. Sort of sad for that person, but c'est la vie. Life is okay. It will go on, even if you don't have any Facebook friends. All right. Then let's look at the maximum value. And the maximum value is also pretty easy because it's just max and parenthesis and putting in that same data. Obviously, you could also copy and paste. I put in a closed parenthesis and I just hit enter. And I see that, oh, wow, like somebody in our data set has over 2,000 friends, right? So can you imagine having an ungrouped frequency table where you'd have to number it from 0 to 2,257 and then look at every single value in between? I mean, a lot of them will probably be zeros, and even a really frequent one will only be like 2, right? So this is a pretty useless thing to look at in an ungrouped way. That's why we want to look at it in a grouped histogram. So what kind of bin size would you like? Maybe 100? But instead of 100, I'm going to put in 99 because it's going to be the formula that I'm going to create. You could like just subtract 1 later, but I'm going to make it inclusive, so I'll explain in just a second. All right, because I'm lazy and I don't want to type in like 101 to 200, 201 to 300, so I'm just going to use Excel functions in order to help me do that. So now I know that my max bin here is from 0 to, my first bin is from 0 to 100. My next bin obviously is going to start where this bin leaves off. So I'm going to take my max of bin number and then just add 1. So now I have 101. And because it's starting from 1 already, I know that if I added 100, it would be 201, and then the next one will start at 202. And so that's why I made my bin size 99, because I know it already starts off at 101. And that way I can make it nice and even. When I tell my max bin to be this thing, my min bin size, my min of bin, border, plus bin size, then I'll get 200. So sometimes it might require a little bit of playing around with the formulas. You might have to add 1 or subtract 1 or something here and there. But yeah, I'm sure you could figure it out as you go. So I'm just going to copy and paste this all the way down. Oh, I know what I forgot. I'm just going to undo that. What I know is that this bin, this cell, I don't want it to ever change. I want this to be locked in, right? Oops. So what I'm going to do is take that. Now it should be locked in. And then copy and paste it a few paces down. And then you could see it goes from 101 to 200, 201 to 300. Ta-da. And I'm going to go all the way up until I capture 2,257. So at least up till 2,300. So that's like twice as much. All right. So that's pretty good. All right. So now I have all my bins. And even so, I have, let's see how many rows. I have 23 rows. But that's a lot fewer than having 2,200 rows, right? So that's why grouped bins, they're better. All right, now let's put in a range. The range is just telling me what's my min bin size and what's my max bin size. This is just to help me so that when I graph it, when I make a chart out of it, that this range will help us put something on the x-axis that's really useful for us. All right, so I'm going to put in a range. And basically, I'm going to make my range out of the min of bin and the max of bin, these two borders, and then just put a dash in the middle. The way to do that is by using the concatenate function. Concatenate just means to put things together. So I'm put in an equal sign and the word concatenate. And then I put in a parenthesis. And I'm going to put in this value. That's my first text. And then a comma to separate my texts. But then whatever's in this, Excel will just concatenate it together, put it all together. And then I want to put in a dash. And then I want to put in my max border. And then close that parenthesis. And let's see what happens. All right, now I get 0 to 100. And so this is going to be helpful for us later when we want to label our x-axis in a useful way. All right, so now that we have that, what we're going to ask Excel to do is find the frequency of all the people. So find me the count of all the people who have a friend count between 0 and 100. Now, before, we've only learned how to count if it's one particular value. How do I tell Excel, count it if it's within a certain range? Well, we're going to use what we call count ifs, right? So it's not just count if, it's count ifs. Because we're going to ask Excel, find everybody above 0, but also under 100. So I'm going to put an equal sign and put in count ifs, right? And whenever I put in count ifs, I treat it almost like it's two separate count if statements that I've just put into one set of parentheses. So I put in the range for the first one and then the criteria. I put in the range for the second thing and then put in the criteria. Here's what I mean. So my range is going to be my, my friend data. I'm going to put in a comma there. And here, I know that this data is not going to change, so I'm going to lock it in place. All right. So it's already been locked in. I'm going to delete this part for now. And now I want to tell it, don't just count it if it equals to 0, but count it if they have a friend count that is greater than 0, right? And so how do I do that? Well, I use my quotation marks. See if you can see that. I use my quotation marks, and I tell Excel, count it if their friend value is greater than or equal to. And then I'm going to close my parenthesis, because what I want to say is count it if it's greater than or equal to whatever's in here. For Excel to know that you now want to treat this as a number, you want to put in an and symbol, and. And then you want to click on that bin. All right? So now it's just going to be counting everybody who has a friend count greater than 0. But that's everybody in your data set, so that's not what you want. You also, at the same time, want Excel to tell you if the friend count is under 100, right? So I'm going to put in a comma, and now I need to put in my criteria range number 2 and my criteria number 2. I know that my criteria range is actually the same as this, so I'm just going to copy and paste this. So I'm using Command C, and I'm putting it here, Command V, right? So that now I just have my that same range. That's never going to change. And I'm going to tell Excel, now tell me if these values are less than or equal to the max of bin. So less than or equal to, close that, close the quotation marks, put in my and symbol, and click on that. Looks a little crazy, but it just means count it if it's greater than 0, less than 100, right? And then I'm going to close that. And I find out we have 8 people who fit that profile. Now, the beautiful thing about Excel is that although it's hard to do that one cell is like, whoa, it's pretty complicated. Once you've put in your dollar signs and locked everything in place that needs to be locked in place, you could just drag that all the way down. And voila, you get this beautiful frequency table that's been binned for you, right? And now that you have this, what I would do is select both the range and frequency, hit Charts, and hit XY Scatter. So this is what sort of your frequency table looks like, but let's put it into columns so that the range will show up well. Okay, great. So I'm just going to cover all my frequency table stuff so you could see this a little bit better. All right, so now you see that our histogram has the whole range from 0 all the way to 2,300, and it's binned all my people together, right? It's binned people who have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 99 friends all the way into one bin. Now, in histograms, one thing you'll learn is that because this axis is continuous, you want your histogram to also reflect that you haven't skipped any values down here. So what you want to do is double-click on your bars, and a Format Data series should pop up. What you're going to do is click on Options, and I'm going to tell Excel, don't put any gaps in between my bars, right? And this way you'll know, this way histograms tell you there are no values that are skipped along here. Every value has been accounted for, right? So that's our first binned histogram. Now obviously you could change your bin size. And so we're going to do that just so that you could see. So I'm going to make this real tiny. Leave it over here. And we're going to do another example where we're going to change the bin size. Maybe instead of 100, we'll want, let's see, maybe really, really big bins, right? Like maybe 250, right? So maybe instead of 100, I'm going to want my bin size to be 250. Now, because of that, I should change this to 249. And all the work has basically been done for us already because we put in those formulas. Let's see. I only need it to go up to 2,257. 2,500 is the earliest that I could close it off at. So I'm just going to delete these rows. They're not useful to me. Oh. Let me delete all of these guys. All right, now let's look at our bins. I'm just going to make this histogram large. And so we could see, wow, like Excel has already done all the work for us, making the graphs everything. All we had to do was change a few numbers here and there. And we see that we basically have that same distribution. Remember, this distribution is called a skewed distribution. And we have this tail that goes out to the right side where the values get larger. So this is what we call a skewed right table. And that's because we have a couple of people who have an inordinately large number of friends, but most people are around, are between 0 and 500 friends. Facebook actually says that their average number of friends is 130 or something like that, which is pretty low in consideration with our data set, where it seems like a lot of people have even 250 to 500 friends. All right. So now let's go back to our slides. All right, so that was the grouped frequency table.